This messy ground is holy ground on the strange freedom of being exactly where I'm at. I tell you, it seems like most of my life I have waited for this part to be finally over so I can just move on to other good things. Like when I was in the university, I hated it so much. Life seemed impossibly hard. My classes were difficult to understand, and quite honestly, I was disinterested in most of my courses because I was more focused on making ends meet in my immediate situation than learning about lipids and anastomosis of cells. I hated exam session too, particularly because I had a lecturer who wanted to be bribed before he'd let you pass his exams. Yes, true story. It was kind of the small corruption that captured the larger indignity of my whole experience. I was not financially buoyant. My parents were struggling to make ends meet. And meanwhile, my own ends couldn't meet anything when it came to having 3 meals a day. I know this could sound like one of those grass to grace stories. I don't even intend for it to be that way, but it was that I was broke, hated school, didn't care to be a medical doctor, and to make matters worse, I schooled in northern Nigeria, which was an incredibly humid, dry, and hot location compared to where I grew up. So even the physical experience of being in school was so darn frustrating. My gosh, I just wanted to finish, get my degree, and finally start to work and make my money or make my own living. That was the finish line. Everything beyond it was where real life would begin. I just wanted to leave and finally start to make money too, like an adult. Well, nobody told me. Uh, Nobody told me that this would be yet another spiral. When I get a job, I will finally breathe. Or when I get a better paying job, I'll finally be happy. When I move to a better city, then I will feel alive. When the political climate shifts, then I will relax into the life I've been meaning to live. My goalpost has shifted again because when I retire and finally own that plot of land with 2 cute donkeys, 3 goats, and egg-laying chickens, then I will finally have arrived. To be honest, a part of me still does this. A part of me can't wait to be retired, to cash out on my 401k, to sip pina colada from the rewards of past investments, chill on my 4-acre plot of land with all the donkeys, chickens, and goats I can enjoy tending. And more realistically, my mind finds comfort in hoping that the political climate changes because perhaps then there would be a beautiful conclusion for me and I'll finally stop living in this limbo and enjoy the life I've been wanting to enjoy. But I'm not bamboozled. Not anymore. I know exactly how this plays out. There will always be yet another thing waiting for me to finally conquer once I escape this particular reality. Interestingly, coincidentally, all the mistakes have been here, seen it, seen through it, and they've been hinting at this since like forever. I was shocked and inspired when I read about St. John of the Cross, who spent years in a prison cell, literally a closet, beaten once a week, starved, humiliated by his own religious brothers. Yet he didn't write his most luminous poetry after the cell. He wrote the poems that we so enjoy reading today during. He didn't wait for the suffering to end before touching something eternal. The Dark Knight was literally his terrain. Meister Eckhart, the great Dominican mystic, once said something that still rattles me. If the only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you, it will be enough. Not thank you for the life I'm going to have. Not thank you for when things finally shift. More like thank you for even this. Isn't that outrageous if you think about this? Or if you're in a funk, how can you really relate to this? The desert fathers and mothers, one of them, Abba Moses, when asked for advice by a young monk, simply said, go, sit in your cell, and your cell will teach you everything. Not go find a better cell, not wait until the conditions improve. Sit here now and let this be the teacher. Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching in chapter 6 and 28, he pointed to the same thing. He wrote, the valley doesn't become fertile by climbing upward. It receives everything precisely because it stays low. The Tao doesn't hurry, and yet everything is accomplished. It so happens that while I recognize the internal movement, the reaching, the leaning towards some future where things will finally be arranged in my favor, there's a growing recognition, a slow, almost reluctant, clear seeing. This path where I am is the only way. It is literally the only place I can be and the only place I need to be. Of course, with this kind of leaning, we're bound to question, is this some form of resignation, a giving up without trying, a spiritual bypassing dressed in contemplative spiritual garbage talk? Well, in this clear scene, I tell you what, there's a weird, might I say, psychotic acceptance that where we are is exactly where we need to be. And that acceptance, when it is full, comes with a strange enjoyment. Not enjoyment like pleasure or entertainment, more like the enjoyment of a river that has finally stopped fighting its own current. The enjoyment of my weight, your weight resting fully on the ground. Brother Lawrence, the 17th century Carmelite monk, he spent decades washing dishes and repairing sandals in a monastery kitchen. He wasn't waiting for a more spiritual assignment or like the prosperity gospel disease of evangelical circles. He wasn't waiting for someday God blessing him with plenty of money. He, as the books about him now calls it, practiced the presence of God among the pots and pans. He wrote, the time of business does not with me differ from the time of prayer. I bet you he didn't have some superhuman equanimity. He just stopped making the distinction between where God was supposed to be and where God actually is, which for him was right there in the greasy water, in the worn leather. Oh, I think he even suffered severe pains later in life. Ramana Maharshi was once asked by a devotee, how long will it take to reach self realization? He replied, self realization is not something to be gained, it is already there. All that is needed is to get rid of the thought, I have not realized. In other words, you're not on the way to the way, you're in it, this way, with all its mess, all its discomfort, all its resolved spirals. It is the way. So, yeah, I'm no longer bamboozled waiting for good times. Fortunately, the spiral doesn't stop. The next thing I'm waiting for will arrive, and right behind that one too is another waiting. What shifts for me now is not the circumstance, situation, and scenarios I'm in. What shifts for me is the relationship to where I stand. And somehow, this shift is also in the body, in the breath, in the way I stand, the recognition of the ground I stand on. The ground is the only thing that's real. And in that realness, I'm fully carried. Ah, it's just this very moment. Totally complete. Contemplative prompts. What are you currently enduring that you've been treating as a hallway to somewhere better? What if the only thing you can change internally is the orientation you have? So instead of a hallway, could it be a room you were meant to inhabit? After all, where are you going? Where in your life are you postponing enjoyment, presence, or peace until a condition is met? What does that postponement cost you today? Sit with Abba Moses' phrase, go sit in your cell, and your cell will teach you everything. What is your cell right now? What might it be trying to teach you that you've been too restless to hear? Can you recall a time when something you desperately wanted to escape became, in retrospect, the very thing that shaped you most deeply? What does that suggest about where you are right now? What would it feel like, not as an idea, but in your body, to stop leaning forward, to let your full weight rest on this moment, this ground, this life as it is?